if you want an answer, you can find an answer. If you're looking for the future of sports media, it will be here somewhere, but trying to locate it, you can build a story to tell.
Hi Richard.
Hey you, how are you?
So tell me what you're up to. I know you have a lot of media things you're doing, but explain with detail what you're doing.
Okay, so I'm in Monaco. Sean, my partner, was supposed to be here, but he's not. That's another story. But yeah, we're here at Sportel, and last week it was Leaders. So it's that time of year where you've got to be out and about a bit. Normally I quite like staying in Brighton and just, I come into London a couple of times a week, stay at home. That does me, but this time of year I make a bit of an effort and I'm on the road.
A bit like Brighton, at least on that side with the sea, right?
Yeah. I mean, this is not a bad place to be.
And tell me about Unofficial partner now.
So we're 4 years in. I think we've done 350 podcasts, which feels like a lot now. It's going well. We're sort of the initial idea for it, and it has changed over time. I think you've just got to move it forward whenever you can. It was me and Sean thinking, well, we'll do a podcast. I'm a journalist. He is a new biz guy. Ran his own business, his own consultancy. He was very early to sort of digital publishing, and we thought, well, let's have a podcast, and then that can be an editorial front end to a sort of consultancy offer. We sell stuff out the back door, and that was the initial. That first sort of 18 months, that was pretty much what we did, and then we got a load of clients, and then it was like, well, the podcast, the Trojan horse has become the horse. There's a whole load of people that want to sponsor us and do things with us and do it in, it became a platform for this audience, the Sportel audience, the Leaders audience, the sports pros, sport business, all of those, that world, that bubble that we're all in, sports business, B2B sport. It felt like, okay, we're offering something slightly different, a different tone of voice perhaps. The actual platform of podcast does a lot of good things. It's quite a useful way of just entering that market. And now we don't, we've switched. So we're now much more, the podcast is a commercial vehicle in its own right. We do quite a lot of the events, big and small. So big ones, we just did one a couple of weeks ago at Olympic Park, the Orbit Tower overlooking sort of East London. And that was convergence, betting, media, the future of media. Then we did one at Two Circles, had a client summit, and we did a turn there. So there's that bit, and then there's a lot of small room. I always say to people, if you're sponsoring an event like this, you need 1,000 people, you need 100 people. Actually, you probably just want 10 people if they're the right team. So that's quite a useful route in.
So what are the things that keep you interested in the sport business after so many years? What do you think people should really look into now? Okay,
so I think we cover the broad, a very broad. We take it very broadly. So we cover as many different subjects as we can, and we're not, to an extent, we haven't got any skin in the game.
Exactly, independent.
So we're just sort of bystanders. So something like here, a lot of the energy and the question is, I think, hovering over this week. There's a lot of people in there selling D2C as both an idea, but also obviously the tech solution to it. I don't know. I'm looking around for great case studies of where this is revolutionary. Is the promise of that what we thought it was going to be, or what the industry thought it was going to be? If we go back to Sportel, I haven't been to Sportel for donkey's years, so it used to be a relatively simple affair where you had broadcast rights and you were trying to
Marketplace.
flog it. It was a marketplace. It was easy. And now it's actually quite tricky to work out where anyone is in the food chain. You know, there's a whole supply chain. There's the plumbing that goes from the fan to the rights holder to the.
I was a plumber. The
plumbers. I love the plumbers. There's money in plumbing, but it's a question of trying to sort of establish the, you know, and this is taking place in an atmosphere in the rights market. You know, every week there's a question mark coming out, and Hugo Sharman this morning, we did a podcast, and he said something interesting. He said that if you want an answer, you can find an answer. If you're looking for the future of sports media, it will be here somewhere, but trying to locate it, you can build a story to tell. But actually, whether it's D2C, whether it's sort of trying to, you know, the whole Gen Z social media engagement, whether it's betting, whether it's the my head at the moment is been in betting for the last sort of few weeks or few months, because it's something I know nothing about. I'm not a bettor, but actually it feels like it's just below the surface of this conversation. So in terms of where the money is going to come from, is ultimately everyone is saying, is it, you know, if ESPN and Sky and NBC turn the taps off, or if the model stops working, which is what we've been saying for 10 years, at some point, what happens? And so it will be different in different places at different times, obviously, and there's not one answer to it. I think betting is more central to the business model than people like to think, and then they like to talk about. And I think that maybe just because it's fresh in my mind, I'm looking at things like, so the American market, and people were saying, well, there's a betting gold rush there. Actually, it's two companies, 70% of the market. Yeah. They've got the wallet. They've done the work. It was a fantasy product. Now, you then go at them with ESPN Bet, or you go in with, you know, Barstool or whatever the brand is. I think good luck with that, because I think that's going to be very hard work to take on those two incumbents. Now, the question then becomes, well, how normal is the American market? Is that something that actually it's something that is directional, or is it just an anomaly that we have to forget about it? The UK market's different. When I look at the India market, I was talking to Artie Devas this morning, and asking about Dream 11. Now, if I had £1 or £1 million to invest, which I don't, by the way, I'd be looking at them, because if the bet is a deregulation in the Indian betting market in the way that it's happened in America, they are positioned to take advantage in a way that very few of others are. And then you get to, you know, a question I often ask, who do you really think is going to win? You know, this is a race that's, and people more or less come out with Amazon, Fanatics, the ones that have got the customer. And I think it talks to the limits. I think there's an interesting question that we're all wrestling with at the moment, which is the limits of the power of the brand versus the product. And the sport brand, the club brand, wherever it is, of course, there's an affinity to club brands or to league brands. But actually, how powerful are they to do the work that this industry needs them to do, that they've done in the past?
I was interviewing Maria Ruaduete from Yahoo Research, and when I asked who's winning, and you know, she said the one with more friends, the one with more partnership, the one with, you know, that are able to work with everybody. Yeah, not a bad take, I think. I think
if you frame it as your world, in the tech world, there is a winner takes all aspect. Now, if we were to sort of use that as a framework, then you are looking at the Premier League, the NFL, you look at the IPL. I said to Richard Scudamore on our podcast, have the Premier League won. You know, and he's obviously saying, well, you can't be complacent, you can't be doing it, but it's theirs to lose, certainly. The luck of the growth of the market that coincided with Abramovich's money that blew up the cost base. which then meant more money coming in, more fans at a time where social media came in. You've got a whole sort of stew of a perfect storm there, which the Premier League has come out as this global leader.
Yeah.
The product's great because the money is funding the players.
Yeah.
It's an unusual aspect. You wouldn't plan it that way.
Yeah.
But it's going to be very hard for anyone to take them on.
Yeah.
And I think then the other question is, well, what do they do with that power?
Huh.
Your world of D2C is, we've been talking now, 10 minutes and no one's mentioned Premflix. But
Yeah.
that's always hovering there.
But it would be, so I'm always fascinated with things like MLS and Apple. So I'm 36 years in the business. Every time there is something different, I'm a fan just to observe first. So you clearly need so much courage to do a move like that. Like, it's really, you can lose everything. Not everything, but yeah, you can make a huge mistake. So that's why when it happens, I'm always there happy, just because I can observe something different, to be honest.
I think there's the leaders last week, there was a lot of talk about the Saudi question. It's a question that is really complicated and difficult, and I have a different position every time I wake up. I have a starting position, which is I don't like it. I can hear all the arguments about change and how
Peter Hutton is convincing sometimes.
He is and I say this, quite often, that Peter is out there at the front of that. He's fronting this, and there are a lot of people here and at leaders who want the money but don't want to do the publicity. They don't want to do the BBC interview. They don't want to have to take that heat. To be fair to Peter, he's come out and said, right, this is what I'm doing, and this is where I stand, and this is the job. So fair play. I know it's complicated. I say it's complicated. It's simple and complex at the same time. When people want to take the money, they're very creative at getting to reasons why you would do that.
Yeah.
And I think, and I'm reasonably sort of, I say, I'm really, don't know where I stand. I'm looking at it and listening, trying to learn more and more. One of the things about the doing a sports business thing, people quite often say, well, do you not get bored of talking about sponsorship? I say, yeah, of course. It's not about how much the shirt's worth or whatever it is. It's just a route into some really quite interesting and sometimes important. And this Saudi question, women's football, women's sport question, these are broader and more important questions. Sport is offering a really interesting route in.
Yeah.
And it allows you to sort of just learn a load, and that's what I'm interested in. I think I'm capable of I would be hopeless under interrogation because my view on most things I can be talked out of it. You could talk me out of anything. You could take 10 minutes and you could turn me around on a sixpence. So I'm very aware of that. Sometimes I think that's a real weakness. Sometimes I think I hear people with very strong opinions. I think, actually no, it's better to just be open-minded as much as you can. But
I know it's not easy, but forget football for a second. Which other sport is relevant to think about in this age?
Well, the word relevant is really important. It's doing a lot of work there. So I think that the question for all the sports I grew up with, tennis, golf, rugby, cricket, the Olympics, relevance. Are they relevant and will they remain relevant? And not to me, obviously, to my daughter, to your kids. That's the real existential challenge, because the framing of all the sports that we call big sports have been targeting white men as an audience and on the whole, and they have been enormously fortunate because of just there weren't many of them and there weren't many options. All the the reasons that we know. Now, totally different. So relevant. Yes, they're still relevant in some cases. Now, is rugby relevant? We're in the middle of we're just coming into the Rugby World Cup. How relevant is rugby, really? How relevant is tennis outside of the Grand Slam, really? How relevant is golf beyond the Masters, the Open and the Ryder Cup?
And Tiger.
Tiger is, unfortunately, he's nearly as old as I am. So in terms of setting alight the generation, I think there's and the Olympics. How relevant are the Olympics? This is quite an Anglo-Saxon view or a parochial view, but I think the ageing of the Olympic audience, all of these questions are really big, nuggety, difficult problems, which, I think that cricket, again, we know where the heart of cricket is. It's India. We know, we've just seen in the last week, the IOC want putting cricket on there purely a naked sort of attempt to get more rights and to grow the Olympics in India. That's what they would love to do. Now, whether or not an Olympic tournament, I asked a question this morning here at Sportel, and it was sort of, it might work. There's a great Indian panel that was debating, sport in India beyond cricket. And it was like, whereas Michael Payne last week said it will go from peanuts to $150 million in rights fees for the Olympics from the Indian market. And that's not, it might work. Michael is very bullish on the Olympics and the value of the Olympics, obviously, because that's his life.
Yeah.
I don't know. So relevance, I think, is really quite an interesting word because you get to cultural relevance, and there is complacency about sport that assumes cultural relevance because it's always been there. It's a historical thing. And we know all of the, questions about, well, it's not the same world and our kids are different and they're looking at different things, and it's whether it's gaming, I have no idea, but we know that they're going to have to work harder. And we know, again, a good data point that came out from our podcast last week was that Andrew Umbers of Oakwell Capital he said that UK sports properties spend 1% of their revenue on marketing. So, if that's anywhere near right, you can start to see the problem. They don't value marketing, they don't see marketing, they don't need marketing. Marketing is a cost. That's their worldview. It's always been their worldview. So, if that's what the organisations are thinking, because people will come anyway, they're in for a shock, aren't they? We know that, and that's there's a real challenge there. Now that's a cultural change as well as someone coming in saying we need to do more marketing. That gets to, well, what's your definition of marketing?
But it's not the tension between B2B and D2C. So these are B2B organizations. That's my view.
Yeah.
And I've always been a fan of D2C, even like testing something, because I did it myself. It's a cultural change. You it brings a respect for the customer, because especially in SVOD streaming, like I did, these are paying physical people in digital, but in front of you. You change your mindset. And that's why I'm encouraging all organizations in sport to do it, just to learn. I mean, this is what I've learned myself. So.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think it comes back to culture so many times. You can there's a lot of people here selling the technology. You can buy the latest thing. You can get the people. It's cultural. Do you actually want to go direct to the customer? You might not like the fans. There might not be as many of them. If you go OTT, or if you go direct to the fan, they might not be there in the same numbers that you think they are. But also, they're a pain in the arse. We know this. Customers are a pain in the arse. Anyone who's worked in retail.
I don't know if I keep this.
Anyone who works in, have you met a sports fan? Have you met a Spurs fan? You want to go direct to them and start dealing with them like Tesco has to deal with them, or an airline has to deal with them, or a bank has to deal with them. They are a pain in the arse. Now, do you really, really want to do that unless you absolutely have to?
You just gave HR department in sport organization the exact list of where they have to hire people if they want to do direct to consumer.
Exactly. It's difficult. It's really hard. It's really hard work. I know. I've worked in a marketing agency. It's really hard.
Yeah. As we are in front of a beautiful sea, this is possibly and hopefully the worst joke of my week. Let's talk about the Pirates.
Oh, that is a lovely segue. Tremendous segue. So, Pirates, we, so unofficial partner, we have created Unofficial Partner Productions, which is run by Matt Cutler.
Yep.
And our first sort of production was a series, the Pirates versus the Premier League. Now, what happened was that, one, it's really good.
I just listened to it, so yeah.
It's good. It's not the same. It's not the normal podcast fodder that you'll hear. It's a different way of telling the story. It's shorter, news, 15-minute podcast. But what happened is that it got out of the audience. Most of the stuff that we do on Unofficial Partner is a B2B. It's a business audience. This got onto football Twitter. It got in the Times. It got in the Athletic. We pushed it. We did some clever PR around it, and it sort of went. The numbers went mad. Spotify then promoted and Apple rejigged their algorithms, and it just got momentum going. So the number of people that saw it was relative to our normal numbers was massive. So,
what is the official name?
The Pirates versus the Premier League. So, and what we wanted to do was come at this very difficult, complex question of illegal streaming in sport, but come at it from different directions. It's what about the fan? Why are people doing it? And it came about because I live in Brighton. I'm a man of a certain age. I went around to a friend who was the same sort of age. He's now putting something in the side of his telly, and I said, "What's that?" And we had every sports channel you could ever want just sitting there. And my sense was this is normal, or it's becoming normal. This is normal behaviour for more and more people, and that's a really scary thing to think about if you're selling TV rights, because it's a leak and it undermines the business model. So then we went to a pub, and then you start to talk about the role of the pub in sports fandom, and you start to then say, right, who are the Pirates? And we started talking about the people themselves. Now, and we got hold of a pirate, which was fun.
I can imagine.
Now, the end of this supply chain is the worst people in the world. So it's real criminality. It's human traffickers. It's drugs, and illegal streaming is a part of their product set.
Yeah, you said it's a vertical.
And it's. I don't want to get stuck in a lift with those people. So we don't. We've got to be realistic. It's these are terrible, terrible people at the other end. I think the reason for doing it is, well, what is the customer, the fan? Why are they doing it? Now, my assumption being that, again, I came into when we started doing the research, was that it's a cost thing, cost of living. People can't afford it. Football's too expensive. Now, that is true. It's obviously true that football is more expensive than it was, and a lot of people can't afford it and don't want to pay. There is, however, the research that came back is a very large chunk of people who pay and download illegally as well. And it's about product market fit. It's about, well, why is it so complicated to watch a Spurs game? What is it that you've done to make watching football and other sports just so complex? It's in so many different places. I've got so many different subscriptions. I'm bored and irritated by the way in which you've handled things over the last 25, 30 years. Yes, the amount of money that is being made I've benefited from that, from having nice stadia. I know all the arguments, but fundamentally, it's about money. It's too expensive, but it's also too complicated. Make it simpler. Now, you then land on our final episode, which is, okay, well, what does all this mean? Where is it going? And I think the sort of conclusion that we got to was, the obvious analogy, and we're talking about it here this week, which is the Spotify Napster moment in music. Is that what's going to happen? And you can see all sorts of barriers to that happening, but there is a real question mark, which again, sports rights holders and broadcasters don't particularly want to engage with. It's not a question, I feel sorry for the Premier League, and because it's not something that you can get much political support for. No one wants to stand in, wave a banner. The government is not going to step in and say, I'm protecting Todd Bowley's interests. There's no votes in it for that. And it's quite hard to get an international consortium together, because UK is hit disproportionately hard, because, it's incredible. Piracy is an incredible sort of indicator of demand. No one pirates crap.
Yeah.
It's so if you went back in your career and said, right, what are the analogies that you would then draw? There's music. There's also the way Microsoft used to talk about the India and Chinese market. Let them pirate it and they'll become fans when they get older. Now, I have no idea whether that worked out or whether that's true. But there is a marketing element to piracy, which I think is something that is interesting to talk about. It doesn't get talked about very often at events like these, because most people are trying to sell solutions, and they're solutions of whack-a-mole, or they are trying to work out how to stop the stuff from getting out, which is, I don't think that's where the answer lies.
So you're moderating a panel on Wednesday here at Sport.
Yeah, you're on it as well.
Yeah,
so this is like a warm-up. So we'll have I can ask you very difficult questions about piracy and direct to consumer.
So thank you. It's been a very noisy and super authentic chat, which is exactly what I normally want from my guests. Thank you for doing this, Richard.
Great to see you.